whispers in the rain. The persistent drumming of rain against the windows of Lavender and Thyme had driven away most customers, leaving Amelia Reyes to wipe down tables in peaceful solitude. The bistro, tucked away on a cobblestone street in Havenbrook, rarely saw strangers, especially not on dreary Tuesday afternoons. When the bell above the door chimed, Amelia glanced up to see a tall figure silhouetted against the gray sky. The man was soaked, his expensive coat darkened with rain, his face partially hidden beneath the shadow of dripping hair. He chose the corner table, the one nobody ever sat at because the overhead light had burned out months ago. "Coffee, please," he said when she approached, his voice rough with disuse. "Black." Amelia nodded, studying him briefly. Recognition flickered at the edges of her memory, but she couldn't place him. The mystery man returned 3 days later, then again the following week, always claiming the same shadowed corner, always ordering black coffee and nothing else. "That's Dominic Thorne," her co-worker Paige whispered one afternoon. "The Thorne Technologies guy, worth billions. His brother died in that horrible accident last year, private jet crash. Now he's like a ghost." Amelia had heard the name. Everyone had. Dominic Thorne had revolutionized sustainable energy storage before turning 30. His face had graced magazine covers, his name synonymous with innovation and ambition. Then, abruptly, he vanished from public view. On his 6th visit, Amelia noticed his hands, elegant but restless, turning his cup in endless circles. Impulsively, she drew a small sketch on a napkin, a window with rain streaming down, but sunlight breaking through clouds in the distance. She slipped it under his saucer without comment. The next time, she added a quote. "The sound of rain needs no translation." 3 weeks into this ritual, during a particularly fierce downpour, Dominic arrived looking more haunted than usual. Amelia placed his coffee down gently, along with her newest offering, a sketch of a garden bench beneath an oak tree. "Why?" he asked suddenly, his voice stopping her retreat. "Why these?" He gestured to the small collection of napkins he'd kept, now pulled from his coat pocket. Amelia considered her answer carefully. "Because everyone deserves something unexpected in their day. Something that's just for them." His eyes, a startling shade of amber, held hers for the first time. "And what unexpected thing do you get, Amelia?" He'd noticed her name tag, the challenge of figuring out what might make a stranger pause for a moment. "That's enough." The bistro was closing when Dominic returned that evening. Through the window, Amelia could see him standing in the rain without an umbrella, seemingly indifferent to the downpour. She opened the door. "We're closed, but I can make you a coffee to go." "My house is falling apart," he said abruptly. "Not structurally. It's solid. But inside, it's empty, dead." He paused. "You study culinary arts?" The question surprised her. "Yes, but I'm also taking night classes in interior design. That's my real passion. I have a proposition. Design one room in my house. Whatever you want. I'll pay you well." Amelia blinked. "You don't know me. Or my work?" "I know enough," he said, nodding toward the sketches in his hand. "One room. If it's terrible, we forget it happened." Something in his expression, vulnerability beneath the wealth and isolation, made Amelia nod. "One room," she agreed. "But I work weekends only, and I'm not signing any scary legal documents." For the first time, the ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Saturday, then. I'll send a car." As he turned to leave, Amelia called after him. "Why me?" Dominic looked back, rain streaming down his face. "Because you saw me," he said simply, "when I was trying my hardest to be invisible." Broken windows. The car that arrived for Amelia on Saturday morning wasn't the flashy sports car or limousine she'd half expected, but a modest black sedan driven by an elderly man who introduced himself as Francis. "Known Mr. Thorne since he was knee-high," Francis explained as they drove through winding roads leading away from Havenbrook. "Been with the family 30 years now." Amelia clutched her portfolio, filled with sketches, fabric samples, and design concepts she'd stayed up until 3 a.m. preparing. As they approached an imposing wrought-iron gate, her stomach tightened. What had she gotten herself into? Thorne Estates sprawled across several acres, The main house a stunning example of modern architecture, all clean lines, glass, and stone. Yet as they drew closer, Emilia noticed signs of neglect, overgrown gardens, dusty windows, leaves gathered in corners of the expansive courtyard. Dominic waited at the entrance, his tall frame leaning against the doorway. In daylight, without the shadow of the bistro, Emilia saw him clearly for the first time. The sharp angles of his face softened by dark stubble, eyes shadowed from lack of sleep, hair slightly too long. He looked both older and younger than his 37 years. "You came," he said, sounding genuinely surprised. "I said I would." Emilia stepped from the car, straightening her simple dress. "I always keep my promises." The interior of the mansion felt like a museum after hours, technically perfect but devoid of life. Furniture sat unused, pristine and unwelcoming. No photographs adorned the walls, no books lay open on tables, no sign that anyone actually lived there. "What happened here?" Emilia asked softly as they moved through the hollow spaces. Dominic's jaw tightened. "After James died, I couldn't—" "Everything reminded me of him," he gestured vaguely. "We designed this place together. Every room, every detail. In the east wing, they stopped before a set of double doors. This was going to be his space when he visited," Dominic explained, pushing them open to reveal a large, empty room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking what had once been an ornate garden. "Now it's just nothing." Emilia stepped inside, immediately drawn to the windows. Despite the dust, the view was breathtaking. Mountains in the distance, a small lake glittering between trees. "This is the room you want me to design?" He nodded. "Do whatever you want. Budget isn't a concern." She turned to face him. "I'll need to know more than that." "A room should reflect who it's for. It's not for anyone. Then why bother?" she challenged gently. Dominic's eyes flickered with something, irritation perhaps, or surprise at being questioned. "Because it's empty. Because it should be something instead of nothing." Emilia walked the perimeter, mind already cataloging possibilities. "Tell me about James." The request visibly startled him. For a moment, she thought he might refuse or ask her to leave. Instead, he moved to the window, eyes fixed on the distant mountains. He was brilliant, fearless. While I was calculating risks, he was already 3 steps ahead, convinced we'd succeed. His voice softened. He loved being outdoors. Hiking, climbing. Said he thought better with earth under his feet instead of concrete. Over the next hours, Emilia sketched preliminary designs while asking questions. Some about the space, others about James and Dominic himself. Gradually, a picture emerged of the brothers. Dominic, the methodical visionary. James, the adventurous spirit who pushed boundaries. By afternoon, Emilia had a concept. A space that honored James's love of nature while creating something functional for Dominic. A room that could breathe life back into the house and its owner. "I need to see the gardens," she announced, already heading for the French doors leading outside. "They're overgrown," Dominic protested, following reluctantly. Perfect. The once manicured gardens had indeed surrendered to wilderness, but Emilia saw potential in the chaos. Wild roses climbed trellises, herbs had escaped their beds to spread across pathways, and native flowers pushed through gaps in stone. "When did anyone last come out here?" she asked, kneeling to examine a patch of thriving rosemary. "The groundskeeper comes monthly to ensure nothing damages the structure. Otherwise—" He shrugged. Emilia stood, brushing dirt from her hands. "I know what this room needs to be." "Already?" "A conservatory studio," she explained, eyes bright with inspiration. Glass walls extended into the garden, bringing the outside in. Reclaimed wood furniture, a workspace facing the mountains, plants everywhere. Her hands moved as she spoke, painting the vision. "It should be a place for creating, for thinking. Somewhere that feels alive." Dominic studied her, something unreadable crossing his features. "You barely know me. Or James." "I know enough," she countered, echoing his words from the bistro. "You hide in shadows, drinking black coffee while keeping mementos drawn on napkins. You live in a beautiful house you can't bear to inhabit. And you miss your brother so much you've stopped living too." She held his gaze. The room I'm designing isn't for a ghost. It's for whoever you're ready to become next. For a moment, tension crackled between them, her boldness against his carefully constructed walls. Then, unexpectedly, Dominic laughed, a short, rusty sound as if he'd forgotten how. "Hire whoever you need," he said finally. "Do whatever you want with the room, and," he hesitated, "come back next Saturday, if you want." As Frances drove her home, Amelia looked through her sketches, adding notes and refining details. Among them was a new drawing, Dominic standing at the window, a solitary figure framed by light he couldn't yet feel. The garden's rebirth by the third Saturday, a transformation had begun, not just in the room, but in the rhythm that developed between them. Amelia arrived early, bringing pastries from the bistro, and coffee made the way Dominic preferred. They would walk the property together, Amelia pointing out features she wanted to incorporate, Dominic occasionally offering forgotten details about the original design. "James insisted on this particular stone for the pathways," he explained one morning, crouching to touch the weathered pavers. "Said it reminded him of trails in the Cascades where we hiked as teenagers." Slowly, Amelia assembled a team, local craftspeople. A gardener specializing in rehabilitation of neglected spaces, an artist who worked with reclaimed materials. She was careful to preserve the essence of the brothers' original vision while breathing new life into the abandoned space. The conservatory took shape, walls extended with glass panels, wooden beams reclaimed from an old boathouse, furniture built by hand rather than ordered from catalogs. Amelia worked alongside the craftspeople whenever possible, learning techniques, getting her hands dirty. Dominic observed from a distance at first, then began to linger, asking questions, occasionally offering suggestions. One afternoon, Amelia found him helping the gardener clear invasive vines from a stone bench hidden beneath years of growth. "I forgot this was here," he admitted, fingers tracing the carved initials, DT plus JT. "We put this in right after moving in. Said we'd sit here when we were old men, arguing about who deserved more credit for saving the world." Amelia knelt beside him, gently brushing away moss. "Tell me more about the company, about what you were trying to build together." That question opened a floodgate. Over lunch, simple sandwiches eaten on the newly cleared bench, Dominic spoke about Thorn Technologies' mission to revolutionize energy storage, making sustainable power practical for communities worldwide. He described breakthroughs and setbacks, his voice growing animated as he explained technical challenges they'd overcome. "What happened to the company after?" Amelia asked carefully. Dominic's expression clouded. "It's running on autopilot. Good people in charge, but the vision, our vision, that's stalled." He shook his head. "I haven't been inside headquarters in 11 months. As May turned to June, Amelia's weekend work at the estate began stretching into evenings. Sometimes they worked side by side in comfortable silence. Other times they talked for hours. Dominic gradually revealed the full story of the accident, how James had been returning from a renewable energy conference, how Dominic had been scheduled to travel with him but stayed behind for a meeting. "I keep thinking if I'd been there," he said one evening as they sat in the half-finished conservatory, watching sunset paint the mountains gold. "You might both be gone," Amelia finished gently, "or you might both have survived. That's the cruelty of what-ifs. They're traps with no escape." She told him about her own losses, her father's death when she was 16, the scholarship she'd missed because they couldn't afford the remaining tuition, her mother's struggle with illness. "We can't control what happens," she said, "only how we rebuild afterward." The conservatory neared completion as summer reached its peak. Plants flourished in the rehabilitated garden, climbing newly built trellises to frame the glass walls. Inside, Amelia had created zones, a drafting table positioned to catch morning light, comfortable seating oriented toward the view, shelves filled with books about architecture, design, and botany rescued from boxes in storage. But as the project approached its conclusion, Amelia felt an unexpected hollowness. Soon there would be no reason for these weekends, no purpose to their conversations. The thought troubled her more than it should. One Saturday in late July, she arrived to find Dominic in the garden, phone pressed to his ear, expression intense. When he saw her, he ended the call abruptly. "Everything okay?" she asked, setting down her bag of design samples. "The board wants me back," he said. "There's a major investor interested in our next-generation battery technology, but they want to meet the founder." His fingers raked through his hair. "I don't know if I can do it." "Be that person again." "What person?" "Dominic Thorne, visionary CEO." His laugh held no humor. "The man who promises the impossible and somehow delivers. The public figure. The leader." Emilia considered him thoughtfully. "Is that who you were? Or just the role you played?" The question lingered between them as they worked through the afternoon, placing the final elements in the conservatory. By sunset, the room stood complete, a space where past and future merged, where nature and technology complemented rather than competed. Standing in the center, Emilia felt sudden tears prick her eyes. This room marked the end of something, not just the beginning. "It's perfect," Dominic said quietly, moving to stand beside her. "Better than anything I could have imagined. It needs one more thing." Emilia reached into her bag, pulling out a framed photograph, one Francis had helped her find in storage. It showed the brothers standing on a mountainside, arms around each other's shoulders, laughing into the camera. She placed it on a shelf where morning light would touch it first. "Now it's finished," she said softly. Their eyes met, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. But before either could speak, Dominic's phone rang again, the board pressing for an answer. As he stepped away to take the call, Emilia gathered her things, suddenly certain of what she needed to do. When he returned, she was waiting by the door. "I'll have my final invoice sent over tomorrow," she said, voice steady despite the ache in her chest. "The maintenance instructions for the plants are in the folder on the desk." Dominic stared at her. "You're leaving? Just like that?" "The job is done," she replied simply. "And you have decisions to make that don't involve me." "Emilia." "Thank you for trusting me with this space," she interrupted. With his memory, "It's been," she swallowed hard, "it's been more meaningful than you know." Before he could respond, she turned and walked away, each step harder than the last, the weight of unsaid words pressing against her ribs like stones. Glass towers, Emilia had almost convinced herself she was fine. Almost. 3 weeks had passed since she'd walked away from Thorne Estate. She'd thrown herself into work, picking up extra shifts at the bistro, accelerating her coursework, even taking on a small design project for the owner of a local bookshop. She definitely wasn't checking business news sites for mentions of Dominic Thorne or Thorne Technologies. Until the morning she walked into the bistro to find her co-workers huddled around Paige's. "Phone, he's back," Paige said, eyes wide as she thrust the screen toward Emilia. "Your mysterious coffee guy." The headline made her stomach drop. "Reclusive tech billionaire returns. Dominic Thorne announces revolutionary energy initiative." The accompanying photo showed Dominic at a podium, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, addressing a crowd of reporters and industry leaders. He looked polished, confident, a world away from the man who had stood with her in an overgrown garden. "There's video," Paige added, tapping the screen. Despite herself, Emilia watched. Dominic spoke about Thorne Technologies' commitment to making sustainable energy accessible globally, announcing a major expansion of their research facilities and a partnership program to implement their technology in developing regions. "This initiative honors the vision my brother James and I shared," he said, his composed voice betraying no emotion. "Sometimes we need to step back to see the path forward more clearly." As the press conference ended, reporters shouted questions. One cut through the noise. "Mr. Thorne, rumors suggest your return was influenced by someone new in your life. Care to comment?" The camera captured Dominic's momentary stillness, a flicker of something genuine beneath the polished exterior. "Some people show us possibilities we couldn't see for ourselves," he answered carefully. "But this company's mission has always been about more than any individual." Emilia handed the phone back to Paige, face burning. "I need to prep for opening," but privacy proved impossible. By afternoon, local news had connected the dots. Small-town Waitress linked to Billionaire's comeback. Customers she'd served for years suddenly looked at her differently, conversations pausing when she approached tables. "Did you really redesign his mansion?" Mrs. Winters asked while Amelia refilled her tea. "Just one room," Amelia corrected, keeping her voice neutral. "Well, I always said you had talent," Mrs. Winters replied, though Amelia couldn't recall her ever saying anything of the sort. Worse were the whispers she wasn't meant to hear. Gold digger, opportunist, sleeping her way to success. The final straw came when her design instructor pulled her aside after class. "Your sudden connection to Dominic Thorne could be a wonderful opportunity," he said, voice low. "The department would benefit from such a high-profile relationship. Perhaps he might consider funding our new facilities." Amelia stared at him, anger rising hot in her throat. "There is no relationship. I did a job. That's all." That night, she received a text from an unknown number. "I should have called sooner. Can we talk?" She didn't respond. 3 days later, Dominic appeared at the bistro just before closing. Amelia froze when she saw him, not the disheveled man from the rain nor the polished CEO from the press conference, but something in between. His eyes found hers immediately. "5 minutes," he said when she approached his table. "That's all I'm asking." "We have nothing to discuss," she replied, setting down a menu she knew he wouldn't use. Amelia. Just her name, but the way he said it, like something precious and fragile, made her resolve waver. Fine, 5 minutes. After closing, those were the longest 2 hours of her shift. When the last customer finally left, Amelia locked the door and turned to find Dominic standing by the window, watching rain begin to fall, an echo of their first real conversation. "I owe you an apology," he began without preamble. "I should have contacted you before the announcement. I didn't realize they would connect you to it." "Is that why you're here? Damage control?" The words came out sharper than intended. "No." He took a step toward her, then stopped himself. "I'm here because I miss you. Because that room you created, it's the only place in the house I can breathe. Because I keep thinking of things I want to tell you, questions I want to ask you." Amelia wrapped her arms around herself. "You're back in your world now. Board meetings and press conferences. I don't belong there. And I didn't belong in your world either. The quiet bistro, the small town. Yet you made space for me." His eyes held hers. "What if we could create something new? A world that has room for both of us?" "It's not that simple," she whispered, though part of her wished it could be. "People are talking." "Making assumptions. My instructor asked if you'd fund the department, for God's sake. Let them talk." He moved closer, close enough that she could see raindrops clinging to his coat. "Amelia, the room you designed, it wasn't just about honoring James. It was about showing me a way to live with his absence without erasing him. You did that. Not with money or grand gestures, but with understanding. And now you've returned to your company. Mission accomplished." She tried to keep her voice steady. "You don't need me anymore." "That's where you're wrong." His hand reached for hers, hesitant. "The company, the announcement, it wasn't about going back. It was about going forward. And I want—" He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "I want to know if there's a path forward that includes you." The sincerity in his voice undid her. Tears she'd been fighting for weeks finally spilled over. "I don't know how to be part of your world without losing myself in it." "Then we figure it out together." His fingers interlaced with hers. "Day by day. No expectations, no assumptions, just possibility." Outside, the rain fell harder, drumming against the windows like a heartbeat. Inside, in the quiet space between them, something fragile and new took root. Not an ending or a beginning, but a continuation. Sunrise reflections. Autumn painted Havenbrook in amber and crimson as summer relinquished its hold. For Amelia, the changing season mirrored the transformation in her own life. Gradual, beautiful, occasionally turbulent. She had taken a leave of absence from the bistro to focus on her education and her fledgling design business. The small studio space she'd rented above the bookshop now displayed her portfolio and samples, the words Reyes Interior Design painted on the door in elegant script. It wasn't much, but it was hers, built with her talent, her vision, her hands. Her relationship with Dominic evolved with careful intention. They established boundaries, created spaces that belonged to each of them individually and together. Weekends often found them at the estate, where Amelia had begun restoring other rooms, not all at once, but one by one, each with purpose and meaning. Dominic divided his time between Thorne Technologies' headquarters and Havenbrook. The company thrived under his renewed leadership, though he was careful to build a structure that didn't depend solely on him. He assembled a team that shared the brothers' original vision, including a promising young engineer named Vivian, who reminded him of James in her relentless optimism. "I'm not trying to replace him," Dominic explained as they walked through the garden one October evening. "But I'm learning to share the weight he carried, to trust others with parts of the dream." The conservatory had become their sanctuary, a place for quiet conversations, for working side by side on their respective projects, for simply being together in comfortable silence. Amelia often sketched designs there while Dominic reviewed reports or made calls, the space accommodating both their worlds. Not everything was smooth. The media occasionally resurrected interest in their relationship, forcing them to navigate unwanted attention. Some in Dominic's circle viewed Amelia with skepticism. Some in her world suspected her motivations. But with each challenge, they grew more certain of what they were building together. On a crisp November morning, exactly 1 year after Dominic had first walked into Lavender and Thyme, Amelia woke in the conservatory where they'd fallen asleep talking the night before. Dawn painted the mountains in shades of pink and gold, the garden glistening with frost. Beside her, Dominic still slept, his face relaxed in a way it rarely was in waking hours. She slipped outside, wrapping herself in a blanket against the chill. The garden had evolved under their care, still wild in places but with purpose to its growth, pathways clear but not rigidly controlled. "Like us," she thought, smiling to herself. Footsteps crunched on frost-covered gravel, and then Dominic was beside her, hair tousled from sleep. "Eyes still heavy-lidded? You disappeared," he murmured, sliding an arm around her waist. "Just wanted to watch the sunrise." She leaned into him. "Do you know what day it is?" He considered, then understanding dawned. 1 year since black coffee and rain. "And napkin drawings," she added. "Who would have thought?" They stood in comfortable silence, watching light spill across the valley. Finally, Dominic spoke, his voice thoughtful. "I have something to show you." He led her to his study, once a sterile space, now warmed with elements she'd helped select, bookshelves filled with volumes they both enjoyed, photographs documenting their journey, comfortable furniture that invited conversation. From his desk, he retrieved a folder and handed it to her. Inside were architectural plans, not for the estate, but for a building she didn't recognize. "What is this?" she asked, studying the sustainable design elements, the innovative use of space. Thorne Foundation's newest project, a design institute focused on sustainable building practices, offering scholarships for students who couldn't otherwise afford specialized education. His eyes held hers. "The board approved it yesterday. If you're interested, we'd like you to consult on the interior spaces." Amelia stared at him, understanding slowly dawning. "This is what you've been working on these past months? When you said you had a special project?" He nodded. "It's not just for you, though I won't pretend you weren't my inspiration. It's for others like you, people with talent and vision who just need an opportunity." Tears blurred the plans in her hands. "Dominic, this is extraordinary." "There's more." He hesitated, uncharacteristically nervous. "The main building, I'd like to name it after James, but there's a smaller structure, a workshop space." His voice softened. "I'd like to call it the Reyes Studio. If you'll allow it." Amelia's breath caught. This wasn't about wealth or power or obligation. This was Dominic offering what he truly understood: legacy, purpose, respect for her independence. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say you'll help build it." He took her hands in his. "Not as my girlfriend or as an employee, but as Amelia Reyes, designer. As my partner in this, if nothing else." "Partner," she repeated, testing the word. It felt right, balanced, equal, honest. She thought of their journey, from rain-soaked stranger to reluctant client to friend to something deeper than she had words for. Each step taken not in desperate leaps but in conscious choices, in mutual growth. "Yes," she said finally, "partners." His smile, the real one, not the polished version he showed the world, warmed her more than the morning sun streaming through the windows. Later, they returned to the conservatory, spreading the plans across the table they'd selected together months before. As they discussed possibilities, Emilia felt a sense of completion, not an ending, but a circle coming full circle, ready to spiral outward into new beginnings. On the shelf nearby, the photograph of the brothers caught the light, James's laugh frozen in time, Dominic's younger self untouched by loss. Beside it now stood another frame, Emilia and Dominic in the garden, heads bent together over her sketchbook, unaware of Frances capturing the moment. Not posed, not perfect, but real. Outside, the first snowflakes of the season began to fall, dusting the garden in gentle white. Inside, warmed by purpose and possibility, they continued to build, not just rooms or buildings, but a shared life neither had imagined possible one rainy afternoon a year before.